Egypt's foreign minister holds talks with UK counterpart on Gaza ceasefire and aid access. Medical sources say 251 people, including 108 children, have died from famine under Israel's starvation policy in Gaza. And Trump says lasting peace between Russia and Ukraine requires direct agreement and not a temporary ceasefire. Hello, good evening and welcome to the Qnews main evening bulletin. I'm Mark Summers. Egypt's Foreign Minister Dr. Badr Abdel Ati held a phone call with UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy, discussing ways to strengthen bilateral relations and ongoing efforts to secure a ceasefire and humanitarian aid access into Gaza. Both ministers stressed international pressure to halt Israeli violence and secure aid access to Gaza. They also discussed possible Palestinian state recognition at the UN General Assembly, citing the 1967 borders and East Jerusalem as the capital. Dr. Abdel Ati highlighted the need to counter Israel's violations of international law and outlined plans for an early recovery and reconstruction conference with the Palestinian government and UN once a ceasefire is achieved. Secretary Lammy praised Egypt's role in facilitating aid and regional stability. Aerial footage shows widespread destruction in Gaza as international aid drops continue amid Israel's 22-month offensive. Turkish broadcaster TRT Haber released video from planes delivering aid over Gaza, revealing the devastation across the territory. Countries including Egypt, Jordan, the UAE and Canada are sending supplies, but aid agencies say only a fraction reaches civilians. Israel denies restricting aid despite global criticism and mounting humanitarian concerns. Hundreds of protesters gathered in Yemen's Sana'a to express solidarity with Gaza and condemn Israeli policies. Demonstrators carried Yemeni, Palestinian, Houthi and Lebanese flags, waved placards honoring journalists killed in Israeli airstrikes, and voiced opposition to Israel's plans for a greater Israel. Drone footage showed large crowds rallying in central Sana'a, chanting slogans and carrying banners declaring support for Palestinians. The protest highlighted anger over recent Israeli decisions and commemorated journalists killed in Gaza. Demonstrators called for international attention to what they described as ongoing violence in the region. Mauritanians staged fresh protest in Nouakchott against Israel's ongoing attacks on Gaza. Hundreds took to the streets waving Palestinian flags and voicing condemnation of Israel's military actions. The weekly demonstrations reflect growing anger over mass killings and starvation in Gaza as the war approaches its third year. Activists say Mauritanians gather every Friday, often hold sit-ins near the UN headquarters and the US embassy to denounce the crisis. Protesters stressed their solidarity with Palestinians, describing Gaza's suffering as a daily concern for the Mauritanian people. An Israeli reconnaissance drone crashed this morning in the Rumal neighborhood of Gaza City. It's during an operational mission by the Israeli occupation forces, apparently due to a technical malfunction. The Hebrew language channel confirmed that the drone was of Skylark 3 model, manufactured by the Israeli company Elbit Systems. It is typically used for reconnaissance missions and intelligence gathering. Palestinians in Gaza inspected the rubble of a school hit by an Israeli strike that killed and injured several people. The strike targeted a school sheltering displaced families in Gaza City, leaving civilians sifting through belongings amid the destruction. Gaza's health ministry said multiple casualties were reported. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reiterated his plan to extend military control in Gaza and suggested Palestinians should leave the territory. Arab and world leaders have firmly rejected such proposals, warning they amount to a second Nakba, recalling the mass displacement of Palestinians in 1948. Israeli Broadcasting Authority has reported that the Chief of Staff is set to approve plans to occupy Gaza City tomorrow. It explained that military commanders will hold a meeting regarding the ongoing military operations in Gaza. The report added that Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir will arrive tomorrow to lead the Southern Command and give final approval for the plans to occupy Gaza City. Medical sources in the Gaza Strip have reported that the death toll from the famine caused by starvation policy enforced by the Israeli occupation forces has risen to 251, including 108 children. The sources added that Gaza hospitals recorded 11 deaths within the past 24 hours, including one child due to malnutrition. The Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor reported that Israel has destroyed around 400 homes in the El Zaytun neighborhood east of Gaza City over the past 6 days by blowing them up with explosive-laden robots and bombing them with warplanes. In a statement, the Monitor added that Israeli occupation forces have been leveling the El Zaytun neighborhood to the ground for 6 consecutive days, noting that the destruction was part of a wide-scale military offensive. Gaza's health authorities say more than 61,800 Palestinians have been killed since the war began in October 2023. In a statement on Friday, officials reported 61,827 deaths and more than 155,000 injuries. And over the past 24 hours alone, Israeli attacks have killed 51 people and wounded 369 others. 17 were killed and 250 injured while waiting for humanitarian aid. Authorities added that since late May, when US and Israel-backed groups began distributing aid, almost 1,900 Palestinians seeking assistance have been killed and 14,000 wounded. Now, for more on this, we cross over to our newsroom where Hala is there. Hala.
Thank you so much, Mark. For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by international relations expert Dr. Mohammed Osman. Welcome to Q News, Dr. Osman. Now, could Israel announce the launch of a large-scale military operation in the Gaza Strip within hours?
Thank you for having me, Hala.
It was a pleasure.
So it appears that the Israelis right now are actively preparing for an expanded military operation inside the city of Gaza. A few months ago, about 3 or 4 months ago, Israel had been engaged in an expanded military operation called Gideon's Chariot. And through this operation, they occupied about 65% of the entirety of the Gaza Strip. Now the city of Gaza is one of the main last remaining urban centers inside Gaza that remains outside the absolute control of the Israelis. So now they are preparing for a ground operation to take over the city, which will probably entail a lot more destruction, a lot more death between civilians. It will also entail the endangering of the lives of the remaining Israeli detainees, and also, of course, will lead to more Israeli casualties. It seems that the operation has been approved. The military is preparing to undertake expanded operations, and maybe in later this month or maybe in early September. And actually on the ground in eastern Gaza City, in areas like Zaytun and Al-Shija'iyya, which are in the suburbs of Gaza City, Israel has already carried out incursions and demolitions inside these areas. So in one way or the other, the operation or the initial preliminary phase of this operation has already started, if anything.
And how do you view the Israeli army statements regarding preparations to relocate civilians from combat zones in Gaza to the southern part of the Strip?
It is part of a very long pattern of ethnic cleansing and forced displacement of the population of Gaza. As we have seen, the most northern part of Gaza has been largely depopulated, and now the same fate awaits Gaza City and the rest of northern Gaza. Also the city of Rafah, which has been completely depopulated in the south and wiped off the map and replaced by this so-called Mirage corridor. Entire parts of Qnews as well have been wiped off the map, and the people have been relocated. 90% of the population of the Gaza Strip is displaced in one manner or the other. So you can imagine that this will be just a continuation of this pattern. However, this time it will be a more decisive phase of population movement as they seek to concentrate the majority of Gaza's population in the southern part of the Gaza Strip in preparation for the implementation of this so-called voluntary migration policy, which is basically an undercover project or scheme of ethnic cleansing and forced displacement in Gaza.
Definitely. How do you interpret, Dr. Osman, the statements made by some Israeli ministers about the necessity of annexing the West Bank?
Of course, as well, this comes in line with the policy of this administration in Israel. This right-wing government, or this government that is dominated by ultra-right-wing elements, has been very absolutist in its aims with regards to its territorial ambitions and the idea of Palestinian statehood. They completely oppose the idea of establishing a Palestinian state, and they do advocate for the annexation of the West Bank and even Gaza.
And even Gaza.
And being fair, also defend such notions. And it seems that Netanyahu is on board with such schemes, unfortunately.
Yes.
And unfortunately, also, there has been recently, just a few days ago, an expansion of settlements that was announced by the Israeli government, and it was subtly welcomed by the Trump administration. This is a very dangerous indication,
yes.
And there are reports that the Trump administration would not mind Israel annexing the settlements inside the West Bank, which means part of the West Bank at least. So we are, and already the Knesset has passed a resolution that calls for the annexation of the West Bank. This, of course, is a very dangerous development, and unfortunately, we are moving in a direction where Israel will attempt to eliminate any vestiges of potential Palestinian statehood in the future.
Yes. Sir, is it possible that we could see a breakthrough in the ceasefire negotiations in Gaza in the coming days, or we would be rather optimistic about this notion?
Anything is possible. We cannot outrule the possibility of a breakthrough, given decide to just change their mind, and their patience actually runs out, as some reports are suggesting that Trump has been pressuring Netanyahu to wrap it up and finish the military operation so that they can go to a ceasefire. Maybe then we can see a breakthrough. However, I take these reports with a grain of salt. I do not see any indications of actual American pressure or even American loss of patience with regards to Israel's behavior. If anything, the United States emboldening this Israeli government's actions and its criminal behavior in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So
yes.
My short answer to you, Hala, is no. I do not think that we will see a breakthrough given these current variables. If they change, maybe we can see a breakthrough soon.
Hopefully. Well, from Cairo, that was international relations expert Dr. Mohammed Osman. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us here on Q News. Now we go back again to Mark in our studio to resume our bulletin. To you, Mark.
Thank you, Hala. Hala El-Hamalawi there in our newsroom. Now, Egypt's armed forces have released a detailed account of the country's humanitarian operations for Gaza, highlighting the extensive aid delivered and the obstacles posed by Israeli restrictions since the closure of the Rafah crossing.
Egypt's armed forces have detailed the country's ongoing humanitarian effort for Gaza, underscoring the scale of assistance provided despite severe Israeli restrictions. According to the statement, El Arish Airport has so far received 1,022 aid flights, carrying more than 27,247 tons of relief supplies, while El Arish Port has handled 32 ships, delivering approximately 74,779 tons. These shipments are transferred by truck to Gaza, either via the Rafah crossing, when operational, or through Karm Abu Salim, with all cargo subject to lengthy Israeli inspections lasting up to 24 hours. The military noted that Israel's control and destruction of the Palestinian side of Rafah since May 7th of 2024 has halted aid truck entries through the key crossing, forcing greater reliance on airdrops and Karm Abu Salim. Despite these constraints, Egypt has managed to deliver over 70% of all aid entering Gaza to date. This includes more than 45,125 trucks carrying in excess of 500,000 tons of medical and food supplies, 368,000 tons from Egypt and 132,000 from other nations, along with 209 ambulances, 81,380 tons of fuel, and 168 airdrops totaling 3,730 tons. More than 18,500 wounded Palestinians have also been treated in Egyptian hospitals. From July 27th to August 4th, 1,341 trucks entered Gaza through Karm Abu Salim, while over 5,000 remain in Egypt awaiting access. In the same period, 25 airdrops delivered 24 tons of aid as Rafah stays closed. The armed forces reaffirmed Egypt's steadfast support for Gaza and the Palestinian cause, despite the challenges of delivering humanitarian relief under current conditions.
US President Donald Trump says a lasting peace between Russia and Ukraine requires a direct agreement, not just a temporary ceasefire. Trump highlighted that European leaders share the view that a comprehensive deal is essential to end the conflict. He noted that during the Alaska summit with President Vladimir Putin, discussions focused on key issues including security guarantees and territorial arrangements. Trump stressed that a sustainable peace can only come from mutual agreement between Kyiv and Moscow.
I can see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Russian President Vladimir Putin broke protocol during his Alaska visit by riding with US President Donald Trump in the presidential limousine. The unusual move came right after a joint photo session at the bilateral summit. Putin accepted Trump's personal invitation to ride alongside him in Cadillac One, known as the Beast, the armored presidential vehicle. Analysts say the gesture reflects an unprecedented moment in US-Russia diplomacy, highlighting the unusual dynamics of the summit in Alaska. Meanwhile, European leaders say that they remain committed to pressuring Russia with sanctions following the Alaska summit between Trump and Putin. In a joint statement, the European leaders emphasized the need to maintain and strengthen sanctions and targeted measures against Russia. They also acknowledged President Trump's role in pursuing a potential end to the war in Ukraine, highlighting ongoing diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. Now to some economic news. And inflation in Israel rose 0.4% in July, driven by higher food, housing and energy prices. The increase adds pressure on monetary policy as the conflict in Gaza continues, raising concerns that annual inflation could climb further in the coming months. Food and transport costs drove Israel's 0.4% inflation rise in July, with rent up slightly and some durable goods falling. The housing market remains weak amid low demand. Israel's finance ministry cut 2025 GDP growth to 3.1% as ongoing violence in Gaza weighs on the economy. Experts warn inflation could exceed the central bank's 3% target if pressures persist. And while Tesla faces consumer backlash in much of Europe over Elon Musk's political stance, sales in Norway are surging, highlighting the Nordic country's strong brand loyalty. Elon Musk's support for right-wing politics, including backing Donald Trump and European far-right parties, has sparked vandalism and declining sales across Germany, Sweden, Denmark and the Netherlands. Yet in Norway, Tesla sales rose 24% in the first half of the year, making the country the company's second largest European market. Analysts and Norwegian Tesla owners point to a long-standing 12-year relationship that has helped insulate the brand from political backlash, underscoring Norway's symbolic importance for Tesla despite its small population. Indonesia's Subang Smart-Politan Industrial Park is seeking a surge of Chinese investment as companies look to bypass high US import tariffs, boosting Southeast Asia's largest economy. Abednego Purnomo, vice president of Subang Smart-Politan's operator, described a tsunami wave of Chinese companies arriving since late 2024, with the pace accelerating amid continued US tariffs on Chinese goods exceeding 30%. Indonesia, offering lower tariffs and access to a vast consumer market, is emerging as a preferred destination over neighboring countries. The country's economy grew 5.12% in the second quarter, its fastest in 2 years. President Prabowo Subianto has actively strengthened ties with China, including high-level visits and hosting Chinese Premier Li Qiang. More than 300 people have been killed in northwest Pakistan after 2 days of heavy rains and flash floods. Officials said the deluge struck remote parts of the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, triggering flash floods, landslides and lightning strikes in the deadliest downpour of this year's monsoon season. The Provincial Disaster Management Authority confirmed at least 307 deaths by today, with more still missing. Local residents reported that entire villages were devastated, with homes destroyed and people trapped under rubble. Residents and firefighters in the Portuguese village of Prova battled intense wildfires as flames and heavy smoke threatened homes. Locals used buckets of water and garden hoses alongside emergency crews to try to contain the fast-moving blaze. Thick smoke blanketed the village as firefighters worked to save properties. One resident praised their efforts, saying without them the community would be lost, while another voiced frustration at politicians for neglecting prevention. The cause of the fire remains unclear. And wildfires swept through the Syrian countrysides of Latakia and Hama, forcing evacuations and leaving homes and orchards in ruins. Firefighters and civil defense crews battled the fast-spreading flames amid strong winds, working first to protect residential areas before cooling hotspots to prevent flare-ups. Many residents fled while others joined efforts with hoses and buckets. One farmer in Hama said his home and olive trees were completely destroyed. Local monitors allege some blazes may have been started deliberately, while state media blamed high temperatures, drought and rugged terrain. Wildfires have swept through Spain's northwestern Orense region, forcing road closures and confining residents indoors as extreme heat fuels the flames. In a Corona village, firefighters struggled to contain blazes that kept reigniting, with their local beekeeper saying he lost most of his hives. Spain has received French water-bombing aircraft to help combat fires across Galicia. The country is enduring one of its longest heat waves on record, with around 148,000 hectares burned this year, the second largest area scorched since 2006. China's rare bride's whales are thriving near Weizhou Island, with over 70 identified in recent years thanks to major conservation and marine restoration efforts. The nutrient-rich waters of the Beibu Gulf have made the island an ideal habitat for the 12-meter whales, allowing them to feed, reproduce and nurse calves. Authorities have expanded coral reef restoration from 2,000 to 300,000 square meters, banned single-use plastics and promoted eco-awareness among locals. Researchers say the healthy ecosystem now draws more tourists eager to see the whales up close by boat or even underwater. Hundreds of enthusiasts gathered in Leske in Slovenia for a remote-controlled airplane exhibition, showcasing intricate model planes and helicopters that mimic real aircraft, including jet-propelled models with realistic cockpits. The event featured pilots preparing and flying a variety of remote-controlled airplanes, with audiences watching takeoffs, landings and aerial maneuvers. The organisers highlighted the precision of the models, saying they are so detailed it's sometimes hard to tell them apart from the real aeroplanes. Participant Urban Simcic added that the hobby helps young people develop technical and practical skills, from handling controls to understanding aircraft materials. Ocean Park, Hong Kong marks the first birthday of locally born panda twins Jaya Jaya and Dee Dee, with a special cake, drawing crowds to watch the playful celebration. The cubs were born on August 15th last year to giant panda Ying Ying, whose arrival in 2007 was part of a central government gift marking the 10th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to China. The twins' Cantonese names symbolize family unity and prosperity. Since 1997, Beijing has gifted several pandas to the city, including the late Jaya Jaya and An An, who became beloved icons at the park. And that brings us to the end of our bulletin. But just before we go, let's recap the main headlines this evening. Egypt's foreign minister holds talks with UK counterpart on Gaza ceasefire and aid access. Medical sources say 251 people, including 108 children, have died from famine under Israel's starvation policy in Gaza. And Trump says lasting peace between Russia and Ukraine requires direct agreement and not a temporary ceasefire. Thanks for watching this evening. Don't forget you can follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok. @QNewsEGY is our handle. Have a lovely evening. Take care.